G'day everyone, Dr. Colin here to review the hotly anticipated 8th chapter in the Star Wars saga, The Last Jedi. Heads up that there will be spoilers littered throughout because there's a lot I want to talk about that requires a look at everything in the film, so if that bothers you, bookmark this and come back when you've seen the film. Now, the housekeeping is done, let's begin. The Last Jedi is the third Star Wars film from the House of Mouse, and their second in the main saga. Set immediately after The Force Awakens, it opens with a standard space dogfight. This sequence is visually interesting, but I personally found the cringy forced comedy between Poe Dameron and Hux really irritating and pointless. I will make note that I laughed out loud when Adrian Edmondson appeared in full First Order regalia. There's contrived drama when Poe's recklessness costs the rebels, that's how they're referred to as throughout the film, their entire bomber fleet, and sets the ball rolling for the clunky, poorly plotted story thread that is focused on wholly too much, that involves the resistance forces fleeing from the First Order. This opener also sets a precedent for trying to elicit emotion from the audience for characters that we really have no reason to care about. When we cut back to Luke and Rey, we are treated to a reenactment of the closing scene of the previous film that seems to indicate that the end of The Force Awakens was pretty much an afterthought to give Mark Hamill a reason to be involved. Rey chases Luke around trying to convince him to train her and join the Resistance, but he goes about his days trying to bore her into leaving him alone. These interactions between Luke and Rey are by far the most interesting parts of the film and should have been the main focus, but instead they were sprinkled throughout the film like chocolate chips in a muesli bar, rare sweet nuggets in an otherwise dry and bland affair. Chewbacca seems to have been included purely because he was there at the end of the last film. A scene with him eating his dinner being watched by porgs could have been comedy gold if Rian Johnson had any understanding of how to direct comedy. Finn is reintroduced via yet another dud comedy scene with a leaky Bacta suit, and he decides he's going to sneak around and escape to find Rey to stop her coming back to the ship in the middle of an attack from the First Order. Here we meet Rose, who is starstruck upon meeting Finn, and, I feel, is charming despite her lack of characterization. Rose's charm is entirely down to the performance by Kelly Marie Tran, who hopefully has other, better roles in her future. After some contrived comic misunderstanding, they team up to go on a secret mission that sees them go to a casino planet where we are introduced to a theme that goes nowhere, wherein Finn discovers that the weapons manufacturers who supply the First Order also supply the Resistance. Shock horror. We also meet Benicio del Toro as a stuttering huckster who is actually a double agent. Possibly. It's not really clear what his motivation is, as earlier signs he was just in it for the money are turned around to show him as having ulterior motives to help Finn and Rose, but then they switched his character around again because dramatic tension. Kylo Ren is in this one too, though he does basically nothing except shout, pout and fight. Essentially like the last film, but less interesting. Adam Driver makes the best of a bad lot by putting 110% into his performance, though you'd expect no less from him, and totally nailing the fight choreography. We also see Snoke in the flesh for the first time, rendered with actually very good CGI, so that's a plus. Snoke is a master manipulator with incredible force mastery that surpasses every force wielder from the original trilogy and the prequels. Yet, for all his telekinesis and mind reading, he can't see his end coming, and he goes out like a punk, never having reached any kind of significance other than to tell us what we already know about Kylo Ren. Snoke's chamber is interesting visually, but reminds me a little too much of the void scenes in Stranger Things. Captain Phasma reappears and does a Jango Fett. General Leia is given 10 times as much screen time as in the previous film, even though a fair chunk of it is her unconscious after a ship blows up, and she uses the Force to fly to safety through space. There's Ghost Puppet Yoda who can control the weather, and virtual reality Luke Skywalker who fights Kylo Ren, kind of but not really. Several characters have moments where their death would have had emotional impact and made sense plot-wise, only to get out perfectly fine, while others die for no good reason. Oh, and the child equals hope cliche is really hammered home with all the finesse of a wrecking ball. My major gripe with this film is that it has none of the heart or soul that made the previous 7 entries in the saga entertaining and engaging. It was a case of style over substance that felt like a Star Wars film as it would be written, by a guy who remembers he saw Return of the Jedi on TV once when he was a kid. The overall effect was something I didn't know was possible. I didn't enjoy the film, but I didn't hate it. I felt nothing for this film, a complete and overwhelming sense of apathy that totally blindsided me. Nothing in this film captured my imagination or felt as if it showed any respect for the source material. Luke Skywalker's death was poorly handled, as was the rest of his characterization in this film, but specifically his death, which took the hero of the original trilogy and made him die alone on an alien planet with a whimper, having achieved basically nothing in this film. Leia somehow survived this one, and it raises big questions about how they're going to handle her in Episode 9, though Rian Johnson probably figures it's not his problem now that Abrams is back in charge of that one, and he's been given a 3-film deal by Disney, so he's laughing all the way to the bank. This was Star Wars in name, and that's about it. This all stems, of course, from the main driving force behind this film, destroying the past. Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren both make clear that they need to destroy the links of the past to create a new world. Luke tries to destroy the last sacred texts of the Jedi in order to prevent the Jedi from coming back, and Kylo Ren wants to start a new empire, but must destroy his connections to the past before he can progress. This, of course, is an unsubtle reference to the House of Mouse's game plan, since buying the Star Wars property when they acquired Lucasfilm. They want to divorce Star Wars from the original films, the George Lucas films, so that they can make it in their own image. Sure, they'll sell the fuck out of anything with a Darth Vader helmet or Yoda on it, but in order to push their own agendas, they need to clear away the existing characters and mythos that has been created in the past 40 years. This is why they scuppered the entire expanded universe, and chucked all of George Lucas's plot ideas for the sequel trilogy in the shredder as soon as they could. Star Wars is just another cash cow for the single largest and most influential media corporation in the world. Expect more of the same bland, micromanaged and sanitized gruel from now on from this series. For the first time ever, I have no desire to see any new Star Wars films. To me, forevermore, The Last Jedi will be the film that signified the death of Star Wars.